and welcome to Mann's Model Moments here on a Sunday evening. Let me just have a little look. I'm on the wrong screen. So who do we have? Go for it Painting, Chris Newman, David Markey. Hello. Gremlins Modeling Mayhem. Wow. Hi, Gary. Hi, Phil. I like modeling. That's a great name. Mark Stott, welcome all. So tonight, you may have seen the community post I put up yesterday, day before. Done a few community posts this week, so it's been a bit difficult to catch up. A lot has been happening. So the first thing is I have to thank everybody for the 18,500 almost subscribers that I now have, which is tremendous, really. It's a bit, I don't really know what to say, because it was only at the end of January I was creeping close to 17,000 and put a bit of a shout out. And we had the Talieri and the Ravel videos, which seemed to really strike a chord. And here I am halfway through, a little more than halfway through February, and already at 18.5, which is absolutely astonishing. So thank you to everybody. Both those existing supporters who have been with me for a much longer time and those new supporters that have come on. I actually got to writing the script for my supporters, so YouTube channel members and Patreon people this week. The reason I didn't record it, and you may not be able to see, you can see here on my lip is a bit of a I call it a wound. It's almost healed now. But that was a Valentine's special. So I looked like I'd been beaten up. It wasn't that Maria beat me up. We got, so Maria's been on a diet and she's been losing weight and really sick of it because she loves food, as I do. And unfortunately, or fortunately, we look at it. So Valentine's Day, I got a pizza and said, let's take a bit of a break from, one night won't kill it. So had a pizza, we had flowers and all the usual bits. Pizza was ricotta and tomato and spinach thing. And the very first bite I took of the very first slice was a little cherry tomato, about the big, the halved ones, which was at about a temperature surpassing 1,000 degrees, it felt like, and it kind of got caught in my beard and absolutely burnt the absolute crap out of my lip. Blistered almost immediately, and following morning when I had a shower, I completely forgot about it because it kind of healed. The blister had healed over by then. And of course, toweling dry, toweled my face, I just felt the whole thing just rip off. So then, of course, it scabbed over, so I looked like somebody punched me right in the face. So I was at the shop with this thing. Nope, I mean, it's a deterrent, right, for thieves. But I thought, I can't record a video, like this. It's because obviously a lot of the Patreon and channel membership, really channel membership now, because Patreon has been very disappointing, which is something I discussed in the video. And a lot of my members have moved over to YouTube channel membership, which is, I think, better. I was a bit skeptical about it in the beginning, but I think it's a better way of doing things. And so, yeah, it's going to be a lot of talking to the camera, obviously. And I thought, I can't do it with this, thing that makes me look like some sort of thug. So that's why that video didn't come out this week. That'll be coming out. I'll do it probably midweek now, because I have the 10 things Airfix need to do to not fix themselves, but improve, to really, get themselves to that next level. Because I feel they're in those awkward teenage years of a company almost. There's really mixed opinions about Airfix. You only have to ask on an Airfix and chill. We have the staunch supporters like Moss. You have people like me who take them kind of as they come. So I'm very much a believer in, actions define people and companies. And then you have people who hate Airfix and everything they do irrationally, which I kind of don't get. That's kind of cutting off your nose to spite your face. But hey, And I want to get that video out because I think that's a more interesting video. And obviously the channel membership one is really a limited audience, and I kind of don't want to make it all about, just money, and kind of that focus. So also have the Gotha, is it 244, 242? I can never remember. Powered. It was a glider transport. It's a powered version. This is the powered one, the 148 scale one from ICM. Have the review of that. That's a huge kit. I have started building that JU88P1, which is really so the main parts of the kit that I built so far have really been the old A4, which I think goes back to 2016 or so. It's about 10-year-old kit, so it's one of the, not a really early ICM kit, but a fairly reasonable one. And there's a little bit of cleanup needed on some of the parts, a little bit of flash, but not excessive, not similar that you get to pretty much any other kit of that age. But it's going together really well. The cockpit is, it's a little bit on the mini art side, I would say, in terms of the seats need like one of the seats has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, at least 5 components just to build up one seat, and there's like 3 seats in the cockpit. So it's a bit part heavy. So we had that conversation about parts on Airfix and Chill last week, and I feel it's getting to the acceptable edge of parts count in that way, but it builds up really nicely. So so far what I've seen, it looks like a really, really good kit. I'm on the engines at the moment, so I shall keep you informed of that, and the video of that will go up at some point in the future. I won't make any promises. Okay, let me just quickly go and recap. Born in Radovan Ravlik, that's a very cool name. Welcome. John Alec, welcome. For those of you who haven't seen, John Alec put up a video on the Moonbus from 2001, Space Odyssey. If you're a fan of 2001, or if you're interested in lighting projects or any sci-fi, I'd recommend going and checking it out. Go check it out anyway, because it's a great build, and John Alec's a great guy. So go and check out his build on that. The lighting, it looks really good. So at the end, when you've got just the lights on and the internal lights on, and the sort of exterior lights out, I mean, you could take a still, it could be from the film. It looks kind of film prop-esque, which I mean as a compliment, not yeah, it looks great. So go and check that out. Who else do we have popped in? Gary T. I'm doing an Airfix kit now, and it's fine, but instructions are annoying. So some of the things I talk about in the video, again, I don't want to spoil it so nobody watches the video, but Airfix are at that stage where the design team, I think, is second to none. And if you meet guys like Chris, if you meet guys like well, all of them really, Luke, Dale, yeah, they've all got the passion. They all love what they do. It comes through in that kind of conversation with them, and I don't fault them at all in that. I think their designs are fantastic. I think the Gannet is probably one of the best kits I've ever made. The fit on it is absolutely superb, to the point where, as I think I've mentioned before, you can practically put the model together in some places without cement. So the wings, the rear stabilizers, if you just dry fitted them and put them in, you wouldn't actually need to glue them if you didn't want to. So that side of it, I think they are Tamiya-esque, let's put it like that. I think that is kind of the best accolade you can give to a company, being generally recognized at that kind of level. It's all the other bits that surround some of that, because I know a lot of you in other places in the world, especially the US, in Australasia, in East Asia, have real difficulty getting kits at a reasonable price. And even in Europe, it's expensive, right, compared to the UK. And I do feel they're getting themselves into a little bit of a almost like tunnel vision with, everything is geared to the UK, and that's kind of part of the theme of the video. And I think they need to get a hold of stuff like that, stuff like QC, customer care, all that kind of thing. And consistency. So one of the things, I've got another video which is planned. I don't really know when it'll be, but talking about Tamiya, and why Tamiya have always been perceived as the number one since kind of the 60s, 70s, when they sort of started getting seriously into the game. And one part of it is consistency. Okay, so we're talking about Tamiya. Obviously we have the F-15 here. I mean, they still do some things. They could learn stuff from Airfix and the other companies, right? Because these instruction sheets, haven't really changed, which in one sense is great because you recognize them. But so again, way ahead of their time for when it was made, but compared to a modern Airfix instruction sheet, like the one out of the Spitfire, it doesn't really compare. Problem I think that Airfix have is that's not consistent. So if you look at the Sea King, you look at the Spitfire, 24 scale Spitfire, obviously I'm talking about, and then oh god, what was and then it was the Gannet. Yeah, the Gannet, fabulous kit. The instructions felt like they're cheaped out on. They were half the size, both in terms of number of pages and actually in physical size, which I think when you're looking at a demographic which is predominantly, so 70%, I can tell you this because YouTube gives you all kinds of metrics, 70% of my audience is older than I am, right? And unfortunately, I am not a spring chicken. I've always had a widow's peak. It's, of course, never been quite this high, so it has gradually, gone back in the years. But if you're looking at that demographic, right, I noticed maybe 5 years ago, my eyes, I've always had really good eyesight, and I noticed that I was getting a little bit of blurring on the periphery of my vision. And close-up stuff, which is typically where your vision starts to go when you're older, because basically it's your muscles, your eye starts to stiffen effectively, so it can't move and flex to provide that close-up vision. And that's why you feel like straining your eyes, because it's trying, can't quite get there, which is why glasses, curve it in. So if that's the demographic you're looking at, halving the size, the actual physical printed size of instructions, feels like the wrong way, especially for an aircraft like the Gannet, right, which flew in the late 40s and early 50s, right? So the people that saw those flying around are not 30, right? They're not 40. They're not even 50, So, yeah, I do think Airfix need to take a little bit more of what I would call Gemba evidence. Really look at who they are selling to and addressing that market. I know they want to get newer modelers in, younger modelers in, which is fantastic and a great idea. I applaud everything they do on that. But they need to do that while keeping their existing audience. And let's face it, where the majority of the money lies. So anyway, getting massively off the subject. Tamiya, it's very consistent. And I will say, and it's anecdotal, I appreciate, and some people may have had, poor experiences, but I've never had a Tamiya kit which has had a short shot or had missing parts. Now, I probably haven't had as many Tamiya kits as Airfix kits, but if I think about the last, say, 3 years, let's call it, no, even 2 years. Let's go from the age of the channel. The channel isn't quite 2 years old yet. In that time, I've had, from the most recent Airfix releases, so the Supermarine Spitfire 124 scale was missing the top engine cowling. The Sea King had a short shot on the right side of the fuselage, and my Gannet had a big, like, black inclusion on the front of the windscreen. And it wasn't a one-off because there were inclusions in the sprue, as well that hadn't quite made it, luckily, because it was really big, that one. So 3 of their most recent releases, 3 issues, that's 100% failure rate in their QC from a personal perspective. And in the same time, the last 3 Tamiya kits I've had, no issue at all. Absolutely 0 issue, including ones like this F-15, which were, molded a long time ago, or at least tooled a long time ago. So FX still has things it needs to do, in my opinion. Obviously, it's up to them what they do as a business. I do try to approach it from both a customer and a business point of view. I've obviously got quite a lot of business experience, quite a lot of business improvement experience, distributor management experience, direct sales, retail, all the rest of it. So I do have a little bit of, a few credentials to the name to actually, so I'm not just blowing hot air off the top of my head. There are some grounded pieces in there. And, I've asked channel members as well. I've asked all of you guys about pricing, across the world. So it's all based on real data. It's not just me saying, oh, FX is more expensive in Europe. It's not just me saying that. It's because I've got the data. I haven't included all of that in the video because it'd be really dull. But I have it all if anybody is interested in that, afterwards, including FX. So anyway, gabbing on what is going on, and all that came from a small cherry tomato. Dangerous things. So yeah, even though I thought the piece of pizza was, cool enough to eat, clearly those little cherry tomatoes can be real bastards in retaining that. Anything that's got a lot of liquid in it, that liquid heats up, doesn't have anywhere to go, bang, squirts boiling water on your face. So the only good thing is it was water, obviously, because tomatoes are not full of oil, thankfully. So water burns, scalds heal a lot more quickly, a lot more completely than any oil burns. My girlfriend actually did it with a piece of pizza about a month ago, before she went hardcore on a diet, with some cheese on her cheek. That was much worse. Cheese, of course, oil-based, it gets much hotter, retains a lot more energy, and that was nasty. So she showed me the appropriate sympathy that I showed her as well. So what goes around comes around. Anywho, speaking of Tamiya kits, we have, and as I mentioned before, from the community post, I posted, here she is, the F-15, the Aggressor. So I got around to doing the base camo on the kit. It's not perfect. There are a couple of areas there. You just see there's a little bit where I hadn't pushed down the tape in that little sort of valley there. Hadn't pushed into that corner, so a little bit of overspray there. And there was one other piece as well where I had a little bit. But overall, I think considering normally I would get more than that. I used outlaw paints for all of this, which I think helps, because if you've got something which can dry pretty much instantly when it hits the model, you have less chance of it building up, being liquid, and then having capillary action to creep in. So far, when I've used outlaw, I haven't had, touch wood, any capillary creep, which is the problem I've had in the past with things like Tamiya and other acrylic paints. Whereas outlaw, I haven't had any of that. The only problems I have had is where, for instance, it's been a mistake by me rather than, no, I've put down the tape properly. It's just that you've got that capillary creep coming in. I also used washi tape on this, not Tamiya tape. So a not expensive washi tape either, because you can get all kinds. This was just this cheap stuff I got a bunch off Amazon. I think this came from. You don't get much on a roll. So don't be, as again, if you've seen the community post, that big pile of tape from after doing that, was 3 rolls of that tape. But then again, I think I got this entire box Right, the whole box of washi tape there. I can't remember how much it was, but it was, you know, like a couple of rolls of Tamiya tape, if that. I did use Tamiya for the aluminium here, because I wanted something that was quite flat, and the Tamiya flat aluminium gives a nice sort of it's not too shiny, but it's got quite a good metallic sheen to it. I just used Tamiya thinners with that as well. So tonight what I want to do is get some of the decals on, some of the main decals. Now obviously I can find, there we go. So this is the scheme I've been using, just printed out. And so most of the main decals, you know, like see that. In fact, you can't see them very well at all. Probably won't on the aircraft either. But like the main markings, you know, stuff like the formation light pieces. I'm just going to use the Tamiya decals. There are a few Aggressor specific decals on this, and those are mainly to do with, you know, it's the group. I don't know what the Americans call the Aggressor groups, but 57 ATG, the WA, which indicates, I think, the base. I'm not sure. Correct me if I'm wrong. You do have this little checkerboard at the top here. There's a little shield. And what else do we have? Oh, and the Russian numbers. Now I have the Russian numbers from it's the Su-57, I think, the Zvezda kit, which I think are going to be perfect for that. I have to check the size because that's from a 72nd scale kit. So I need to just make sure that those will actually work. But I'm mainly just going to use the kit decals on all of the stenciling and all that kind of stuff. And then for the specific ones, if I don't have something in the spares box, because I've got a fairly extensive collection of spares box decals, I shall make my own. And I'll probably go through a little bit of that on the channel. The thing is, a couple of the badges, like these badges here, this one there, are present on the sheet already. There you see. So I don't think actually there's too much that I'm going to need to put together for this one. We'll see. Okay. Just checking through the comments. Okay, that's so thank you for the kind words, everybody. I won't put those up on the screen. I think that's a bit narcissistic. Yeah, now topic of the night, pizza eating strategies. So I did all that, right? So I ate it on the cusp of being, you know, knowing that Maria had burnt herself, you know, a month previous or whatever. I was pretty careful. I left it longer than I thought. I tested the cheese, all was good. So when I bit into it and bit straight through that little cherry tomato, which was sitting, you know, like a little cup of boiling water, which of course slightly skinned over, so it contained all that heat, little bastard. And it kind of just popped up. It was just, yeah. So sucking the wind, unfortunately, wouldn't have helped, didn't help. That is one of the worst burns you can have. Sugar syrup. So if you're caramelizing stuff, so sugar gets to really high temperatures before it starts to caramelize. And because it's sticky. So any burn is basically Okay, we'll go to the science of burns, right? So it's transfer of energy. So everything is energy, right? When you get down to a small enough level, everything is energy. So you're talking about how much energy delivery can your cells deal with. Yeah. And generally, they can deal with up to about 50 degrees. 50 degrees is the cusp of when your body, your cells start to give up. They burst and, all those kinds of things. They die. So obviously, above that, boiling water, not good. But your skin is quite hydrophobic. So it repels water. Plus, once you're up at those temperatures, it's quite volatile. So it tends not to stay on the skin too much, which is why if you've got a piece of clothing which is burning thing, you need to get it off as quickly as possible. Oil, slightly different, doesn't wick off the skin in the same way because your skin is hydrophobic. Oil tends to stick on it. So, like suntan lotion and stuff sticks on you. If you get oil on your hands, you have to wash it off with a detergent. So that's one of the things that can be dangerous because, again, it'll stick on the skin and deliver more of that energy to your skin, killing more cells, burning deeper. And sugar is even worse because if you think of it in terms of what's the energy density, what's the repository of energy, gas to liquid to solid, they store more energy. Yeah. So if you're holding a lump of rock at 500 degrees centigrade, it's going to do more damage than liquid at the same or gas at the same, generally speaking, because you're getting less. There's less overall energy and less delivery, broadly speaking. So if you've got more contact time and higher temperature, it's going to kill more cells. It's going to burn deeper as well. So I do not envy you and resist the temptation as I once did stupidly when I was younger. If you are doing any sort of stirring of sugar and waiting for it to caramelize, of like, oh, how warm is this, and like try and taste it, that's just don't do that. This is a good question though. When it comes to masking, tape or liquid, it depends, right? So I will say for the majority of circumstances, tape. And the reason is tape is a physical barrier. It doesn't interact with any, lacquer, enamel, acrylics, whatever. Liquids are the latexes, basically. It's latex that you put on in various forms. And some solvents penetrate latex, right? So I had a horrible experience once using Mascol on it was an Airfix Nat, a red arrow, on the canopy, and then spraying, I think I was using enamels at the time. And I sprayed enamels, and then I sprayed a gloss coat from a rattle can, and the cellulose thinnazole, the nitrocellulose, whatever it was in the spray, went straight through and just formed a cloggy mess, and it destroyed the canopy. I had to sand it right down to try and get it back. It was never quite right. Tape forms a physical barrier, which doesn't interact, so it will not have that issue, right? It also, if you want nice clean edges, you're only going to get that from tape or paper masks. If you can do that. So if I'm doing a large area, not this. But say I was just doing this to grey with the shadow patterns and I wanted to mask those off. Sometimes I'd cut out paper masks to cover large areas because that's the same effect, right? What I will say is what I often do with tape is, because the worst thing with tape is you tape a whole bit up and then you spray it, especially when you're doing complex things like that. And then you take all the masking off, which is one of the most exciting bits, right? It's like unwrapping a present. You get it and you see your finished thing. The worst thing is to realize that you hadn't masked a little section on it, or you've missed a little square, a little triangle somewhere. And you've got this, soft spray, overspray kind of piece there. And it's just like, now I've got to, mask that over and spray it again. So I often use, and this is especially true with canopies, is I'll tape it up and I'm pretty sure I've covered everything. and then I will go over that with latex. So not all the way up to the edge, obviously, because you've got your hard edge for your tape. You've got 2 pieces of overlapping tape, and I'll go over, like this is the edge on the extreme edge of the canopy. So I'll kind of go halfway along that piece of tape and cover all the rest of it. So then you've got the security of having the tape as a physical barrier, but the liquid mask to stop any tape lifting up slightly. I've had that before with an airbrush, especially if you have to go at higher PSI because you've got an awkward paint or something. And have that little, overspray bit that's just crept through. That doesn't happen once you've coated it all in liquid. It also makes it easier in general to take off those, tape masks, because the liquid masking, when it's dry, holds it together, so you can kind of peel it off in sheets. But tape, I feel, I have done masking purely with liquid. If you are going to do that, use at least 2 coats, because there's a couple of things. One is sometimes you can't see where you've masked, depending on whether you're using, what color you're masking over, the type of masking fluid. Maskol is pink if you're masking blues and stuff. Sometimes it doesn't come up. I use like a natural latex colored one, which often doesn't show up in thin layers. So if you do 2 layers, you can see where it is. It's more of a barrier. You've got less chance of, again, like a little imperfection, you're missing a piece. And it's easier to take off. I have had situations with single coats of liquid masking where it's gone into like very thin areas between 2 joints, like here, and the damn stuff just won't come out. You try and pick it out, and you pull it up and you'll pull a piece off, and then the other bit snaps back down, and you end up scratching the paint and thinking, why on earth did I do this? And sometimes you have to put more masking on it, 2 or 3 coats to use that to sort of solidify, like using blue tack, sticky, what do they call it? White tack. I don't know what the names are in the US. Use a big piece of that to get little pieces off. It's a bit of a pain. The other issues, there's several issues with liquid masking, is it can stain some finishes. And it's the worst thing, again. You retrieve all of your masking and then find out it's actually stained into the paint underneath it, depending on what paint you're using. So there are more variables with liquid masking, but it is useful, and especially as a kind of a security measure, definitely. Okay. WA is Nellis Air Force Base, Nevada. Thank you for that. Sunburns are bad. So sunburns are different, of course. Sunburns are still energy. It's UV. Problem is with UV is it will penetrate and kill your cells. So all sunburn is, and the reason that if you can imagine a radiation burn, sunburn is a radiation burn, right? It's just a different form of radiation. And ionizing radiation penetrates into your body quite often, especially gamma radiation. So rather than just getting a surface burn, you get a full tissue burn, which is why radiation burns destroy your internal organs, basically. Gamma radiation burns. Alpha will do nasty things to your skin, but your skin will actually stop an alpha particle. If you ingest it, it's very bad. And your skin will usually stop beta particles, which are electrons, depending on how high energy they are. But it's all still ionizing stuff. It's not good. But UV is the same. It kind of does the same. We have mechanisms in our body to repair all of that stuff. But what you're doing is you're overwhelming them. And your cells have a built-in process called apoptosis, which is basically your cells commit suicide. And this is how your body protects you from things like viruses as well. If a cell recognizes that it's damaged beyond its ability to repair itself, it will trigger apoptosis, so it'll kill itself rather than have the chance to replicate itself and into something which is immortalized or cancerous. So all of us in our lifetimes will have cancer multiple times. We'll have created cancers in our body somewhere, and our bodies have naturally, the cells themselves have identified it, self-destructed, and then your basically different types of white blood cells will come in and mop up the debris. And if they do actually get to that sort of immortalized stage and start to replicate, most of them will be identified by your body and destroyed as well. So our bodies are incredible. But yeah, a sunburn is just a physical manifestation of that radiation burn on your skin. So wear sunblock, guys. Especially, if you are getting to that age where you start to get a little thinner on top, I do have to put it further up each year. That's an interesting one. Is it worth it? I mean, I won't say no. I won't say yes. It's kind of up to you. I mean, you're going to spend the time masking all of those pieces that you want to put glue on, which will protect them. But it's also, you're going to get bits which aren't. So it depends what you're protecting them from. Are you protecting them from paint? Because if it's paint, you're going to get bits that are masked which aren't. And you can just scrape the paint off, or just run a file on it. So Tamiya Extra Thin will actually burn the paint off. I do that sometimes when I'm feeling lazy. It's not the best way because you actually not quite. I mean, it's like welding, right? Would you weld something which has still got paint and stuff on it? It's like, yeah, you'll burn it off, but you'll get carbon and ash and crap in there. So the bond will never be as strong as if you make it nice and clean before you start the weld. It's the same with plastic. So the bond will be stronger if you rub it down. You'll still burn off the paint with, Tamiya Extra Thin. Butyl acetate and acetone will burn through any paint you have. You'll create a bit of a mess, and the bond won't be as strong. Is it significantly different? I mean, for a small part, probably not. For a major join, maybe. So for me, I wouldn't do it because I think it's a bit of a faff. I would rather just scrape the joints afterwards or give them a sand, just a very light sand, just take the paint off. Unless you're putting a lot of paint on, it's going to come off like almost instantly. So, and you don't have to be super thorough. You don't have to go, you think, oh, well, the little nubs that go into those, the little pins that go into the sockets, I'm not going to be able to scrape those. It's like, yeah, that's not going to matter. But at the end of the day, it will work. There's nothing wrong with it. It's just, I think it's a bit of a faff, that one. Gold super glue works well on painted areas without damage. Yeah, I never use super glue on models unless it is for, joining metal parts, because super glue has a lot of disadvantages over its advantages. So, but it's, as with anything, is everything in its right place, right? Okay, so the other bits I've got are, I have some pigments. So these are just ones I've made with oil paints. So just black, and I think this one is burnt sienna, something like that, a brown, basically. These are really, really cheap oil paints I've used, kind of because I wanted to prove a point. But what I do is I use dilute the oil paints in odorless thinners, because I don't like the smell of white spirit. And odorless thinners are just more refined white spirit, right? It's all the same stuff. It's just the level of purity that you have, the smells that you get are from things like terpenes. And the more of those you remove, the more refined it is, the more expensive it is, but also the less it smells. So So I dilute those, and then I pass them through a, I think it's a 200 micron filter. You can buy them from Amazon for like $5, something like that. And that just takes all the big gunky bits out that might cause, build up and look gritty and crappy. 200 microns is, you can get them all the way down to 100. Actually, it might be a 100. I think I might do it through 200 and then a 100. But you could spray these through an airbrush. I wouldn't recommend it, but you could. But they work fine. I use them on the Gannet. I've used them on other builds. They work fine. So that's one of the things that I shall be doing on this kit. And of course, all of that will go after application of the magic pledge. So let me get the keyboard out of the way. Put that down there. And then let's change the view here. And get our lights sorted. I've actually changed the setup here a little bit so that it's easier. I no longer have the big metal bar in front of the screen, so I can actually see what I'm doing a little bit more. Ooh, that is not staying up at all. Why isn't that staying? No. There we go, that's one. And a second light. Give us plenty of light. Right. 1 F-15. So the colours I used on this are, I just used, I think this is, sea grey, RF sea grey, off-white, RF off-white, and true blue. Fairly light mist coats, just so that all that pre-shading and texture comes through on those colours. So the nose cone there is actually just a mix of the grey with a little bit of the true blue and a little bit of extra dark sea grey, and just to bring it down. So it's strange though, because just putting those colours on makes it look quite flanker-esque, especially the nose. Somehow it makes it, the flanker has that sort of drooped nose. It's almost like looking at it, I see that now, just because of the visual. I think it's a visual illusion of, I'm so used to seeing that with a flanker. So let's get our decal scheme. Yeah, super gluing your fingers together is never much fun. The other thing, of course, if you do super glue your fingers together, acetone. Acetone will remove it. So if you've got some Tamiya extra thin around, put that on the bond, that'll get it apart. And if you want to get parts that are super glued off each other, put them in the freezer before you try to take them apart. And that often, because it's quite brittle, it's quite, cyanoacrylate bonds are quite brittle, so it's easy to shear them when they're very cold. Right, where are where are the sexy dogs? Oh, I think I might have left them downstairs. Well, that's disastrous. Okay, well, we'll see what we can do without them. The other thing is, why have I put my scalpel? Well, this isn't good prep, is it? This is not professional. Ah, there they are. Ah. Actually, before I talk about F-15 and decals, the other community post I put up was my next silly project. And the next silly project is making something entirely, some sort of what if for my spares box. Now, this is not my spares box. This is the spares I've accumulated in the last year. So just in the last year. So I have with a couple of other bits in here as well. So there's a fair few bits in here. I also have all the pieces for the Gannet to come into this as well. You can see pieces from the Spitfire here. I've also got some complete tail horizontal stabilizers from that as well. As part of the front of a Spitfire, some sort of AFV. That's a vac form canopy for Lightning. These are various Russian weapons. That's from some sort of Airfix 72nd Scout kit. I should have a quiz, shouldn't I? Can you identify the kit from the spares? What kit do you think that was from? There's a part of a missile, some Russian missiles. So it's going to be interesting. I'm not quite sure what I'm going to build, whether it's going to be a land vehicle or an air vehicle. I suspect it might be an aircraft, just from the relative volume of pieces I have. Sort of aircraft compared to AFVs. But as I mentioned, this isn't all of them. So this is just my recent. This is just the recent spares from my model shed. They don't have the ones at the shop, which I say I've been kind of migrating to. And it doesn't have any of my other ones, which are mainly categorized into different areas like missiles and fuselage and wings and that sort of stuff. Now actually, I don't think this has any of the Sea King pieces either, because I've got all the rotors and stuff from that. So yes, you cruel people have me building some sort of weird what if thing out of all of this junk. So it's going to be interesting to see what that comes up with, and I'm not quite sure how to approach that on a live stream, but any suggestions on a postcard, please? So let's go back here. Now this again is, I think, where companies like Airfix and ICM, Academy as well, are pretty good with this, and Italieri getting better, is color profiles make such a difference, I feel. I know on the F-15, okay, it's usually just grey on grey, so you're probably not adding a huge amount with color on this, but for decal placement, I often find it does add a little bit, because you get a better idea of where things go, what things are, whether you've got the right piece, etc. Whereas this is just a bunch of numbers and black and white stuff. So we'll have to see how this goes. Obviously, I've not put the canopy on here as well, because I think it's going to be easier for me to paint this. Obviously, I haven't done the ejection seat yet. So that'll be the last piece I do. I'll finish it all off by doing that. And obviously then I'll stick in the engines and all of the under wing stalls and bits. And actually I've moved kind of onto that piecemeal assembly a bit more from what I used to do, which was a lot more complete assembly, I would say. This is more sub-assembly. This, of course, is the main piece, but bringing in those other sub-assemblies that can be worked on separately is something that I haven't done an awful lot of. But righty-ho, let's see. What a shame that we don't have the checkerboard ones. We've got these stripes. Never mind. So I usually start with decals. I don't typically go by the sort of order here, if indeed there is an order. I tend to go by the size of decals that I'm putting on something, and I generally start with the national markings. Now, here, all of them are exactly the same, which makes this a little bit easier. I don't have to get it right in a particular one, in a particular place. So we have port wing. Obviously, I have to kind of come across cross-referencing to here as well to make sure I'm getting them correct between the two, and also the right sort of placement. So that's kind of going to come in there, because get them the right way up. That wouldn't be a good start, would it? So, as I've mentioned before, I just use cold water and then just a brush and my trusty scalpel in 90% of cases to put these on. Right, while that gets ready, I'm going to quickly go and get my sexy cog so I can actually see what I'm doing. So bear with me for just 2 minutes. And we're back. Sexy cogs. Do we have any movement in decals? No. So people mentioned Tamiya decals being the kind of weakest parts of the kit, and I kind of agree. Some ways I've not particularly had real issues. Tamiya decals, they can be quite thick. I think that's an advantage if you're starting modeling, because they're quite robust. But I appreciate that's not necessarily for everybody. Yeah, they do take a while to actually come off the damn paper. So if you're used to Airfix decals or cartograph decals in general, they can be a little bit more challenging to work with. But on the flip side, if you're used to Tamiya decals and you go to cartograph, then it's bliss. There we go. So yeah, they are pretty robust. Tamiya decals, I find. So kind of here. Just a little bit before there. Not quite parallel with this line. That's probably about right. One thing I found I had to be careful with this, and anybody who's making this kit, is these, obviously, if you just put it down like this, puts all the pressure on the front. So I have tended to do that when I don't have normally I have my aircraft stand that I use to paint and spray stuff with. But obviously that is at the shop at the moment. So again, we're just in front of that kind of this piece here, more or less parallel to that. Looks good enough for rock and roll, as they say. So I'm just looking through the comments here. You're humming the tunes and things. Now we also have the honeycomb nose step marks, which go all over the goddamn place on this thing. Really everywhere. In fact, no steps are probably the majority of decals, I think, on modern aircraft. Don't step here, don't step there. You've got the hex ones, and then you've got the normal ones. I don't know if anybody knows why they have these sort of hexagon pattern ones, and then just the normal ones. I don't know why that is. I'm sure there is a perfectly logical reason somewhere why that is the case. I just don't happen to know it. I'm not actually a big American aircraft aficionado. I know kind of the broad basics of a lot of these things, but not a lot of the detail on the US aircraft. I'm also just trying to match up. I'll just put that on there, of course. Different decal sheets. So the ones from this profile, which is obviously from a specific Aggressor decal sheet, and then the Tamiya ones, just say are covering the great majority of what we have here anyway. So what I'll probably do is I'll probably do the wing ones first. I find it's usually best to work consistently in areas rather than do particular types. Firstly, because it stops me turning things over, getting things stuck to my fingers. I find the main problem I have with decals, if the decals are okay, is them getting stuck to my fingers or getting knocked off or moved and stuff. So again, it's user error. And the way I find to get around that is to concentrate on a single area at a time. So I often hop through different decals on a sheet to make sure I've done one wing and then the other wing, then the undersides of those wings or whatever. Depends on the aircraft, depends on the structure of it, and also I've mentioned before, in focusing on quick wins, to kind of keep your mojo up for these sort of projects, especially ones that go on a long time. So sometimes I will actually, like for the Gannet, I did this. I'll do, and this is one of the reasons I do the sort of country insignia first, is I'll do the big, flashy ones first, because they are very visible, so it's difficult to actually, not notice them and smudge them somewhere else. And also, they give you decals. I think add a huge amount to a model. I think they're one of the major things that really starts to make a model look like what it is. So I think they give you that quick win feeling that you're actually achieving something with your project, which I think is an important part. As I say, especially on a larger project, to feel like you're achieving something rather than it just being a, sort of, you've been working on this for ages and it's kind of a thankless task. Now, having said I never have a problem with these, I've just flipped part of that decal over. But again, this is why I find Tamiya decals are relatively forgiving in terms of manipulation. Of course, this one's going to be a sod, I can tell. Can't really see because I'm kind of obscuring it with part of the aircraft itself. You can see here it's flipped over on itself. I don't quite have enough across it there. So I've just compounded the problem by flipping it over to try and get that off. So when this happens, the main thing, I think, the main advice I would give is patience. So you just got to be careful. There we go. We've got it flipped the right way. It's actually upside down on my finger. Thumb. Come on. There. There we go. Right. So it actually sits kind of at the bottom of the star, just on the union between these two, on this door here. You can see that, the edge of this door. It'll come out when we're panel lining it. And about halfway down. About there. Yeah, I think we're good at that. Let's see if I can do the next one without screwing on it quite so much. So it's just how it happens sometimes. That one went down straight away, absolutely perfectly where it's supposed to be. Typical. Just check that they are pretty much symmetrical. And they do seem to be. Corresponding pretty much to where I have done the masking, which again is good. It means I masked it approximately in the right place. So now we can go back and do that wing. So all the nose steps and stuff on this wing. So looking at this, just keep that one out of the way for a second. So this looks to have, the stenciling doesn't seem to be any different, which is unsurprising. I mean, they take standard aircraft and just repaint them, so that all looks good. So we're going to need 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Interestingly, they show different ones. Oh no, they are all 56s. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, they don't show as many nose steps. Let's start off with 5 and see how we get on. Yeah, so one of the reasons that sometimes I go just for the big stuff and ignore some of the smaller stuff. Again, if it's been on a big project, I've been working for a while. Sometimes, especially with Airfix kits these days, although this isn't that much better, the amount of stenciling that you have, you just think, oh my God. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 of these, which is quite convenient because they're in little blocks of 4. That makes them much easier to cut out. Got no steps all the way along there. What, 1, 2, 3, 4 there. And 3 along there. Okay. So I'm going to follow this guide, basically using the Tamiya decals as far as I can. So let's kind of pre-pledge those areas. So we've got a little one down here. We got one just up here, and one at the edge there. These are all the hex ones. Oh, somebody has a question. Let me see. Go for the display, without a shadow of a doubt. I wouldn't go for God Hand, personally. I think the display ones are actually better. I've had several people with God Hands break them. So they're a little bit more fragile. I've had display. And I believe, I think I've mentioned before, I was contacted by a company that actually makes them. I believe they're all made by the same company. They have different grades of the nippers. The display are a better bang for your buck. I don't think you get in terms of the extra money for God Hands, I don't think you get the equivalent extra in terms of quality. They're all beautiful, but if you've got a single cut nippers, the display ones are absolutely fine. And you can break them. Single bladed nippers are more fragile by quite a long way than the standard ones. So if you wonder why I'm doing the whole thing here, I'm going to be ending up doing the whole thing anyway. And sometimes it's just nice just to work in little sections like this so you don't get kind of any spotting effects. You know, like any raised areas because you've got slightly thicker just solution on one area of the model compared to another. I mean, these are very thin layers, but even so. What we're trying to do at the end of the day is create a painted on effect. So anything you can do to kind of combine it into the main sort of background. So I'll often do pieces along, you know, panel lines and things. But yeah, I'll definitely go for the display. So yes, I was approached to see whether I wanted to do branded ones of my own, which I would love to do, but currently don't have the funds because, and I think I mentioned this on stream before as well, the volumes needed to be able to do that are quite high. At the moment, I don't have that kind of traction, you know, so it would be a lot of money sitting in stock, which I at the moment can't afford. I'd love to be able to, but that is a project for another time, I feel. One 1/35th scale wallpapering. That's an interesting thing. I once tried to wallpaper a doll's house, so I don't envy you, because that's quite a challenge. Wallpapering and wiring a doll's house was not something that I would particularly want to repeat. Yeah, that's a good shout. Dave is, you know, I use these when I don't want to risk my good ones. I have bent a pair of displays in the past, the single blade part. It is surprisingly easy to do, so I have been a lot more careful with them since that. Fortunately, I had a bunch of samples from this company, not free, but they were a lot cheaper than retail, so I wasn't stuck. But yeah, they sent me 3 different levels, and which are equivalent to, you know, different companies' single-bladed nippers. And to be honest, I think the mid ones, which I believe are the equivalent to the displays, I think are actually better than the than the top ones. Not just me either. There's a chap who he's an American modeler. I can't remember his name, otherwise I'd give him a shout out on the channel. But he reviewed, I think, like 20 different nippers, and he came up with the same. I ordered my first displays based on his review. It's a really good one, really thorough. It goes through all kinds of makes that I've never heard of. In fact, I don't think I'd heard of Display when I first saw his video. Okay, no step, no step, no step. Of course, they couldn't just put them all in the middle of the panels. They all have to be slightly different. So we have these two. Again, they kind of don't go quite in the center, and they go more in line with this panel line than the bottom. This one, which kind of goes above it, the same sort of angle. Of course, I'm using Pledge here. You can, of course, use whatever decal setting solution you choose. Okay, let's sort of on this one. Funny, the panel lining sort of diagram on the aftermarket decals doesn't actually line up with the Tamiya kit 100%. Of course, why would it? Why make it easy? So this is more up here and straight, just by there. This one doesn't want to come off backing paper. Come on, come on, you can do it. Come on, come on. Come on. There we go. That one is just a little bit further in, I think. More to there. Just put my thumb on there as it was drying, so a little bit of water just to dissolve that, to get rid of that. And then the last one goes on the edge of this. Right in the middle, like so. Kind of in line with the other one. Here we go. The joy of tiny little warning signs. Just a quick look at the chat again. Going to the whiskey cabinet soon. Yeah, I might do that after the stream. Yeah, that's a pretty good price, $30.99. I think mine were about the same. What templates have I used for painting? Well, I just masked it with tape using, let's see, wand. So I think this is a set of aftermarket decals. I haven't bought the aftermarket decals, but I found this online. Just printed it off, and I've just masked it off with washi tape, using the panel lines as a guide, the reference material. So this is the cheapskate's way to create a particular decal scheme. All right. Next pieces. Okay, so there's one. Okay, it's actually just inboard. It goes across here. And the next one is just above this junction here. And then there's one just kind of there. That's another 3 of the no steps. Is there another one anywhere to go? No. Okay, fine. So I could make it a straight 4 then and get a complete line, but no. So that to do its stuff. We also have this little, they look like 2s, but they're not. I never know what they are, like hooking points or something. Again, I'm not an expert on aircraft stenciling markings. I'm sure somebody will be able to tell me the proper name and use of that. Oh, just drop that in the water. It's grim up north. I've only been to Blackpool once. Yeah. That's it, really. It's a long way. I mean, even when I was in Manchester, it's a long way. Maybe franchise. 1, 2, 3, 4 no steps all along here as well. Typical. Okay, let's cut those out in prep. Get those soaking. So I find deculling is kind of one of the most rewarding and most frustrating steps of a model, because I think it really starts to make the model come alive. Once you get all of this stuff on, it starts to actually bring it out to make it look like what it's supposed to look like. But sometimes, you know, especially when you're doing these little fiddly things, it's like, oh, I just want it to be over, you know. BTs. I remember BTs. Calling them model shop is a bit of a stretch, I feel, but I know where you're coming from. They did do some good deals. Right, so you also have from here that little 2 symbol bit there. And we have there and there. Just overlaps on the second piece here, like so. So I think sometimes as well with this, you can sweat about the exact placement of these, you know, too much. I think the main thing is that they look consistent. Yeah, because I'm also spotting how, you know, I've made little mistakes in masking and stuff on this. You know, when I've gone too far or not far enough on things. But you know what? It doesn't really matter. Right, my little hooky thing goes about there. And we've got a no step, which are actually angled inwards, so they're reading from that way. Interesting. Not quite sure why that is, but hey ho. Now, occasionally I do get this where the brush actually holds the decal. You just have to kind of encourage it to come off. There we go. Of course, I've nudged that other one across. Must have done that. There we go. This kind of illustrates though why I don't like to, if I were to pick this up and do something on another piece to put another decal on, I would inevitably end up touching part of this wing, and these little things, even when they are ostensibly dry, can so easily just come off on your finger, and it's like you'll never see it until you see it's missing, which will be too late. Get off. Stay on the model. And of course, the reason I'm doing all of this before I put any panel lining on is because I want the decals to be exposed to all the same stuff, so that they don't look, different. I want them to have the same weathering, however subtle that is, so it kind of integrates them more into the overall look of the finished product. I know these are all these sorts of things that your eye recognizes but doesn't really dwell on because there was no interest to it really. But if you didn't have them on compared to one that did, you would notice it. It's one of those small things about the eyes. And on an aircraft like this, I think it's probably more important where you've got some which are extremely visible really against the white, compared to maybe a World War II aircraft in 72nd scale, which is more camouflaged. It's like probably not going to pick those up as much. So I think omitting decals in a stage of this is also absolutely fine. So I'm a bit bored of those now, so I'm going to go for something big. So let's do the refueling. I don't know what you call it. Stenciling the bit so that you can identify where the refueling port is for air-to-air stuff. And we've also got these, which I'm not sure are represented. Yes, they are 34 and 35. Okay, they're just lines with more of the 75. Yeah, okay. Got it. Cool. So, yeah, 35 and 34. So I'm sort of moving down now the airframe. I'll do a 35 first, because I don't want to cut both off and then I'll lose which is which. Yeah. Alrighty. So stencils, and it's a good question going, right? Because this is all terminology. So decals, both, as I say, are valid pronunciations of the word. Is just the terminology of what they are. Stencils is what it is on the aircraft. So stenciling is all that bit that outlines areas on the aircraft that are put on. I mean, they used to be put on by stencils. You know, you used to put a template over, spray over, and that would be the stenciling, marking, you know, on the aircraft where you don't step. You know, for, in this case, you know, outlining where the refueling port is. You know, just delineating areas of the aircraft. So the stenciling is really the term that would be used for what it actually is. Decals are these sheets. They're transfers. They are water slide transfers. So it's the actual thing that they are. Like the mechanism by which we are putting the stenciling on. And that's how they used to be, you know, where the stenciling origin, if you like, comes from. In a lot of modern aircraft now, they are actually stickers. They are, you know, I don't know if they're vinyl, but they are a sticker that's applied to the aircraft, which is rated for the speeds that it flies at. I can't remember where. I think I was talking to was it Typhoon pilot or something at React one year, and they were talking about it. So not painted on at all, but actually a high performance sticker, which, if you think about some of the snobbery in scale modeling when people call them stickers, because of course these aren't stickers, they have no stickiness, they have no adhesive in the way that you think of with stickers inherently in them. They're called water slide transfers because they obviously slide off when water is applied, like so. And transfers because you're transferring the ink by means of that water slide process. Because basically you have printing on a film that has this water slide property. Like a water soluble glue, effectively. But yeah, people can get very uppity about what you call them, how you pronounce them. And at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. You know, people get worried about the silliest things, really. Life is too short. There are things to be pedantic about and things not to be. This is no knife. This is a scalpel. This is a Swan and Morton. So the largest makers of scalpels worldwide, I believe. So I've used Swan and Morton scalpels, God, for decades. And I have several surgical kits, so I've got a number of these. I've always found they do different handles. So this one is a number 3. So they're obviously surgical steel, surgical stainless steel. They So they have a weight to them without being really heavy. They have these knurled pieces to stop them slipping out of your hand, because obviously they are designed to be used to cut people open. I just like the way they feel in the hand and the kind of size of it and everything. They do ones with wooden handles and plastic handles and larger handles and stuff. But the number 3 is kind of probably the most used. And you get a variety of different blades for them as well. So 10A is this angled one. 11s are a thinner one. A 10 is like a curved blade. That's what you'll see in surgery shows and stuff where they show you cutting something. But you can also get little ones with tiny little blades at the end, just like a little curve piece about 6 millimeters long. You get them that are hooked, which are actually quite good for doing panel lining. So there's a lot of versatility, and they last forever. I've never broken one of these. I've lost them. I've lost a couple of these, but I've never broken one. I'm sure it's possible, but I mean, in most circumstances, it should be impossible. I just find they're much nicer in the hand than the aluminium circular ones. I know some people prefer the ones that have like a rubber grip on them as well, but I've never had an issue with this. But then I'm used to using a scalpel in other ways as well. So. And once again, the great thing about our hobby is, there are no things that say you cannot use X, Y, or Z knife. There are things which are better or worse for particular jobs, as with any tool. But you can have the best tool in the world and not get on with it. I will cite Harder and Steenbeck airbrushes as this because I have an H&S and I really don't like it. Other people absolutely swear by them. I've never found it. It's always come up lacking for me. But I wouldn't ever stop anybody. I wouldn't ever say don't buy one. It's just I think they're over-engineered for the results that they produce. But that again is only in my experience. It maybe I just haven't found the right one for me, but I've had good experiences with sort of middle of the range or cheaper brushes. And if I were recommending to somebody what to get, I would always say go with a cheaper brush, especially when you're starting. Not necessarily the cheapest one you could get, that you've found in a market somewhere, or anything made by Humbrol, God no. But a Fender or something. I'm not sure why this is so overlapping. Is it supposed to lap over? That's the right one. Yeah, that's 34. Does it? No, it shouldn't overlap the edges. So why, when this one fits perfectly, does this one have a couple of millimeters over both edges? Morning. I don't know, Luke. What were you talking about? It's evening. It's almost night. I know you're on the other side of the world, but good morning. It is not. This is so I just have a little bowl of water here that I am putting all of the decals in to dissolve them, to do the water slide bit. And this is Pledge, which is a furniture polish. It is Pledge with Future Shine. Unfortunately, no longer made. It was made by Johnson & Johnson, the Future Shine piece is the important piece. That was actually a product called Future, which was previously a product called Johnson's Clear with a K. And it's basically an acrylic-based floor polish that also has a couple of plasticizers and surfactant kind of chemicals in, some organic compounds that act in the same way as the solutions. It kind of works in the same way as Microset and Microsol together, as well as combining a bit of varnish. So I only use Pledge. I don't use Microsol. I don't use Microset separately. Either of those, I do have a video on this. Either of those are easy to make yourself. I wouldn't recommend anybody buys them. They both work perfectly well. Don't get me wrong. It's just that it's a bit like, selling people grass. It's just like, yeah, if somebody sells you grass, it'll be grass, but there's plenty of it around that you could get for yourself. So if you make a dilute solution of spirit vinegar, you have Microset, at least the functional active parts of it. And if you make a dilute solution of something like IPA, like 5% IPA or ethanol, you're basically going to do the same thing as Microsol. All that does is soften the decal. And this has a compound which acts as a plasticizer, which is effectively the same thing. It softens things. It makes them more plastic and flexible, which is why it works in terms of drawing your decals down onto the surface. Unlike Microset, it's actually a high pH compound rather than a low pH. So the other reason I like it is, sorry, I think I can hear a rat in our walls, in the roof, which is right next to me. We've got a thatched roof, so that's quite normal. But it's a bit disconcerting when you hear them scurrying. Where was I? Plasticizers. So, yeah, it combines a lot of properties in one thing, which is why it was so beloved of the modeling community. It's also great for putting on transparencies. Unfortunately, J&J stopped producing that in September 2022. So unless you can find an old bottle of it, in your mum and pop's hardware store somewhere, you're kind of a bit out of luck. Now, I've said this on a couple of streams. I do have something that I think will work, not in exactly the same way, but it contains the same plasticizer as this. I am still... Oh, sorry. I just realized I have left a little piece of masking tape on there. So I've been looking for a while for an alternative to be able to recommend to people. I've been testing, and I haven't done my last bits on it, which I've been meaning to do, principally because of time constraints. Because things I was looking for was something that works with, as a kind of, semi-gloss varnish, which Pledge does, that has those softening properties and setting properties for decals, is widely available and cheap. Those are the things, and that's not a particularly easy set of combination of factors to have. As you can see, hopefully you can see with this decal here, this is going over a curve here, and it's got a little, effectively not quite 90 degree. How about it's more than 90 degrees curve here, and yet it's conforming to that. Now, it hasn't finished yet, but it's been softened enough to pull it into that. Pledge also dissolves itself. So effectively, if you put a coat underneath and a coat on top, it kind of embeds it and then you can put it over and it kind of semi-dissolves itself, so you're kind of encasing the decals, so it really protects them. The tail end of the horizontal stabilizer attachment on the fuselage part. I'm not sure what I did correctly, but good. Thank you, John. Right. Where was I? So I've done that. Don't know why that isn't the right size. Who knows? I do think it was weird that this was longer than this one when this is a shorter span, but there you go. You can never tell, can you? So we also have these 3 hex nose steps to go on the fuselage here. So let's get those covered off. And then looking ahead to what I'm going to do after that, probably this tailpiece stenciling here, which is part transfer 32 here, and then another 56. Okay, let's do 32. Oh, we have caution. What's that one? 46. I realise I have these upside down for me now, but 46. Okay. It doesn't look much different, really. I thought it was going to be exciting and then be in red or something, but it's just caution. It just looks kind of like the rest of them. Okay, we've got 2 more nose steps there. So for these ones, we are right over the engines. I mean, if it isn't obvious that you shouldn't be stepping on top of where the engines are, I don't think there's much hope for you. You shouldn't be in the Air Force, really. I wouldn't have thought. I would feel very tentative about stepping on any parts of an aircraft, you know. Especially because they are not cheap. So yeah, really, I mean, the decals are, you know, for the stenciling. All the stenciling on the aircraft obviously goes on before it becomes operational, you know, as it gets delivered and then is, you know, liveried up for whatever airbase it's at, whatever group are using it. How close are they? A little bit less. So you really want to put them on first, because then anything you do afterwards, like the panel lining, which is, you know, to create that illusion of depth that we've talked about before, captures those as well. Again, helps give the feeling of it being integrated and all part of the same thing, rather than things that are stuck on, you know. All right, that's that. And the big one, actually put a little drop onto the horizontal stabilizer itself. Typically I'd use a slightly larger brush for that, but we'll go with what we've got. This is right here at this root. I apologize you can't see this because obviously the vertical stabilizers are right in the way. This is an area that I probably would normally use tweezers, just to give me a little bit more control. Not in actually the moving the decal, but in removing the film. Sorry, the paper. As it is, that's gone okay. Let's turn it around so you guys can actually see. There we go. Looks okay. Then we have no step just on the outside of that. Although it is this way in, so you would be reading it sort of coming from the center of the aircraft rather than the other way around for some reason. And the last nose step for this side goes right at the back here. Just after there, kind of aligned with that little line. Yeah, about so. There we go. So we've got, a nice comparison there of one side to the other. One with all of the those step national markings, basic stenciling. So again, there's not a huge amount of difference. It's just those little pieces that kind of your eye would notice if they weren't there, but it's not particularly drawing your eye to them. You're not looking for where it says no step. Or if you are, I can't help you. Okay. Any other questions? Because I probably won't do any more on that right now. Some kind of big wins I can get here quickly at the end. think we kind of got most of that. Yeah. Yeah, I think I'll call it there. So basically I have to mirror that on the other side. And then of course I have to do a similar process underneath. Of course, you don't have no steps on the underside of an aircraft unless you're working in zero gravity somehow. But there are these little pieces that need to go. Well, there is actually a no step on here. I suppose it could be at a massive angle. But those are most of the pieces. Not an awful lot on the underside. And then we do have some on each side to cover. So obviously formation strips. We've got an odd little bits of stenciling. But the main ones, of course, are the ones that we actually need to look at. Where am I going to get these? So I have to look in the spares to see what I have to do those. And if not, then I'm going to have to look at actually creating, these are the ones. So we've got the aggressor marking, definitely going to have to do something with. I don't think I've got anything like that. These checkerboard pieces and the main 57th ATG serial numbers and the WA. But you see me do the whole kind of what I do with decals on this kind of finish. So outlaw paints give a quite smooth finish. It's not a gloss finish, but it's quite smooth, which is the important thing. It's the smoothness of the paint. Generally, matte paints have a more grainy finish, obviously, but this is pretty smooth. The outlaw paints are pretty smooth, and I've found pretty good results putting decals on them so far. So I used RAF white, which is it's not a pure white. As I say, I used wasn't extra dark sea grey. It was the one below that, just sea grey. I can't remember what the RF one was, but yeah, I didn't look at I mean, I looked at the FS colours and then I looked at what I had, which was closest. The blue is actually just called True Blue, so it's not the Aggressor blue. This blue looks different in different lighting. So if you look at it, there's some pictures. I think they're actually taken around Nellis, where it's in the sun. It looks this quite pretty blue, but if it's in shade, it looks quite a dark, almost navy blue. So I went with what it looks like more in direct sunlight, because this will get knocked down a bit when we do some of the weathering. So I wanted to start lighter, because if you start darker, you don't get as much. Plus I wanted to get the overemphasis on some of the sort of pre-shading and the panel line marking and stuff. So I wanted that contrast to be boosted. But yeah, that's kind of what it is. And I say for the nose cone, I looked at the FS color and I just mixed up until I got something which was as close as I thought I was going to get. Again, it depends on if you look at photographs, it depends on what lighting conditions they were taken, because again, this can vary. And even actually the color it quotes, the FS number, I think it's FS something like 3620. Yeah, FS 36320. That either comes out as a straight grey or compass grey, which is like a blue grey. It looks like the blue grey in pictures. So again, I go more the visual look of it, because that's what we're trying to recreate, right? Is trying to create the look of the aircraft rather than, oh wow, this is FS 36320, which shouldn't be as blue. So it's like, yeah, but it looks that. So that's why I'm going to do it. So I go much more from the look of it rather than the exact number, because the look is, at the end of the day, what you see with your eyes. The visual appeal of it is what we're trying to do, rather than this is a spot on 1-for-1 correct color, because that means you got the wrong color, because that's not for scale. So you want to try and go for the lighter anyway if you're going to scale, because you're getting 48 times less light bouncing off this than you are the real thing. So if you went the exact color, it would look almost black on this. Oh, that's a good question. I have a couple of photo etch bending tools. I haven't used any of them. So the best photo etch bending tools I've ever used have been square-ended pliers. I do intend to use the photo etch bending tools I've got. I haven't used photo etch since I've had them. Or not photo etch that requires precise bends. Things like seatbelts and stuff, I don't use that kind of thing for. So yeah, the best one, I don't know. They can be bloody expensive, photo etch bending tools. It's possible to make your own. That's another route to go down. I have actually thought about doing a video on that. I did buy the bits to do it, and I got kind of distracted with other projects. Principally, I inherited 2 photo etch bending tools, so I kind of didn't need them as much, especially as I wasn't using photo etch. But yeah, best one, they all do the same job, right? The main thing is that the materials are robust. You've got sharp edges, because otherwise you won't get a crisp fold in that. Photo etch also takes time to get used to. Even with the best tools in the world, if you just go and start building, you'll have, you have to anneal photo etch if you want to bend it, right round something, for instance. So it takes time. Photo etch is one of those things which is a double-edged sword. It can do really nice things, and it can be a real nightmare to work with. Some people love it, some people hate it. I'm kind of in the middle. It really depends. But I don't think there is a best tool. I think they're all pretty much of muchness. I would go for the one that suits your budget and what you're likely to use it for. If you've never used one before and you haven't used photo etch before, I wouldn't buy one. I would I'll get used to using photo etch more generally, and use smaller bits like seat belts and work your way up to big things, rather than I've got this big photo etch set, for instance, for this kit, and I've never used it before, and I'm going to get a tool to do. I think you're going to become a cropper if you try that. So I would start small and work up to it, because photo etch is it's an art and an evil all to itself. Variable, I would say, Mario. Yeah, it really depends. So I think the Bronco J20 that I did, I don't think I had any problem at all with those decals. I've used Chinese manufacturers decals. I've used Russian ones, Vesta ones, and Ukrainian ones from ICM. I wouldn't say any of them are as good as Cartograph. I think Cartograph are the gold standard. They often tend to be quite thin carrier filmed, which makes them more difficult to work with, but can provide nice effects. So it's definitely variable. FS colors are always, it's a bit like RLM colors, it's a whole nother discussion. It's a can of worms, Pandora's box, when you start to get into these things with modelers. Please don't apologize for they're not dumb questions. There are no dumb questions unless you're asking the same thing twice and not learning anything. It's great to have the engagement. I really enjoy it, guys. I think it's great to get the questions rather than not, because if we don't get the questions, are people interested? Are people learning? Are people enjoying it? I would much rather have questions and get distracted and only do a little bit and demonstrate kind of things, rather than the purpose of these streams isn't for me necessarily to finish the projects here live. It's not kind of a substitute for doing a video. It is about showing you my process, you asking any questions of that, because I'm used to it, right? I will do things without thinking about them, which you might not do. And, asking questions about why do you do that? It may be as simple as, well, I've always done it like that. There's no real reason. Or it might be a damn good reason for it. And you won't find out unless you ask questions. So please keep them coming. Definitely not done. You are a braver man than I, David. I mean, photo etch on ships for me is, that's something to be admired without actually having the desire to do it myself. Let's put it that way. But yeah, it just shows you can use the most basic of tools and get good results. A lot of it is experience and getting that experience with the tools and the properties of the materials you're doing, taking your time, patience, not getting frustrated with stuff. If you get frustrated with stuff, just take a break, walk away, do something else. That's, I think, the best advice anybody can give with these projects. Alrighty. Thank you, Gav. I'm glad it's informative. As I say, that's kind of part of the point of this for me. Not to try and be condescending and kind of like teach people, but as I say, just to show what I do, answer any questions on that. Obviously, the social side of it for me as well, just to engage in all this is great. And and also it keeps me motivated to keep building, to keep making these things. And keep pushing myself as well. There's a lot of stuff that I've done on the channel that I probably wouldn't have got round to if it hadn't been for you guys, asking these questions and attending this. So thank you all very much for joining. Have a great rest of your day, your evening, your afternoon, wherever you are in the world. And I will see you, hopefully, if you've got some time tomorrow night for Airfix and Chill. Not sure what the subject is tomorrow. We never know what the subject is until just before usually. But please do join us if you can. That'll be from 8 tomorrow till 10. It's always a good crowd we usually get on, and we have a good chin wag there. So if you don't get to see that, I'll probably do a stream during the week, maybe looking at that spares box build, about kind of deciding, coming to a decision with all of you guys, what am I actually going to make. There will be a video going out, as I say, hopefully get that out on Tuesday. We'll have to see how tomorrow goes. I've still got quite a bit of editing to do on the Airfix video. And as I say, I've got the Gotha, and then there'll be still got the Beaufort build to finish up, to put out. That'll be the next build video. But the JU88P1 shouldn't actually be too far after that. I've tried to crack on with that at a reasonable pace. So thank you all. Have a great evening, great day, great rest of the week, and see you soon. Bye.